Media training tip of the week. Be easy. Be promiscuous. And by that I mean quite literally, do not be discerning when it comes to what media interviews you do. If someone asks to interview you, just do the interview. Yes, there can be exceptions. If you are a right-wing fundamentalist Christian preacher, you might not want to do an interview for Penthouse. I get it. But beyond that, for most business people, political people, people in the nonprofit sector, you're simply better off doing all interviews and getting messages out you want on the topics that you've been asked to discuss. The amount of time and energy and effort people spend sort of vetting a media outlet. Well, 17 years ago, they once editorialized against someone else in our industry close to us, so we're not going to do an interview, they're anti our industry. That is a complete waste of time. Forget 17 years ago. 17 minutes ago, what an editorial board of a media outlet says or does may be completely different from the attitudes of the reporter. When you turn down a media interview request, several things happen immediately. Number one, you're guaranteed not to get any ideas or quotes that you care about in the story. Number two, you've given ammunition to your enemies. They now have more space to trash you or criticize you. Number three, you've made the reporter not feel very kindly towards you. They might not hate you, but you've made their life more difficult and you have rejected them. Nobody enjoys rejection, especially if you didn't even call them back and tell them why. So all of these things, I believe, are factors that should lead you in the direction of doing interviews. Now, if you're really big and famous and you're in such demand that you have 1,000 interview requests every day of the week, okay, fine. Be selective, go for the biggest venues. If you are Angelina Jolie or Leonardo DiCaprio and any day of the week you could do 10,000 interviews, fine, be selective. But for most of the rest of us, that is not the case. You're a mutual fund manager and you manage $9 billion. You probably think of yourself as this big, successful, wonderful person, and I'm sure you are. You may think of yourself as someone who deserves to be on the front page of Barron's and Wall Street Journal. Fine. But quite often the best way of getting there is by doing your local newspaper, by doing that obscure newsletter, by doing that financial podcast that maybe you had never heard of before. The more media you do, the more likely you are to get more media, the more likely you are to be seen. Sometimes it's a media outlet with an audience of 10, but one of those 10 is a producer or a booker that 6 months from now is in charge of a major media news network and gives you your own show. You just never know. The other thing about simply saying yes to all media interviews is it gives you more practice, more experience being interviewed. Like a lot of things in life, the more interviews you do, the more comfortable you get, and the better you get. Of course, you can put some limitations. If some high school blogger wants to interview you for 3 hours, you could say, look, I've got 3 minutes in between planes I'm trying to catch. You don't have to give unlimited access to everyone. But the amount of time you take, or that many people take, trying to vet a media organization, size it up, figure out whether to do the interview or not, you'd be much better off just doing the interview. The process is the same. Figure out the topic, figure out what your 3 messages are, have great sound bites, at least half a dozen for each one, and execute. Maybe the interview, you've got to cut it off after 5 minutes, but at least you've given the interview.